Well, welcome to this tutorial on LTSPICE. If this is your first time using LTSPICE, you're in the right place. And we're going to start with number one, how to draw a simple schematic in LTSPICE. And our objective is to draw this simple voltage divider with the 10-volt DC source here. After that, we're going to see how we can run a simulation to figure out the DC voltages and currents in this circuit. And finally, after running the simulation, we want to obviously view or possibly even annotate these results back onto the schematic. So after you have LTSPICE installed and you open it for the first time, your screen may look something like this. Let's look at the top of the screen where we have a number of pull-down menus. So File, View, Tools, Help, and underneath that there are a number of icons. Now most of these icons right now are not highlighted, and that is because we don't have a schematic open. Let us start a new schematic. So in the upper left-hand corner, click on this symbol, and you will see a gray screen appears. Once we have a new schematic, it's blank. We need to add components to it. Back up to the top where the icons are, you can see there are an icon for resistors, capacitors, inductors, a diode, AND gate, and this ground symbol. So let's start by clicking on the resistor icon, and when you drag the mouse cursor back into the screen, you will see a resistor symbol dragging along with the mouse cursor. Left click on the schematic to drop down one resistor, and then I'll left click a second time to create a second resistor. To exit this resistor entry mode, just press the escape key. Next thing I want to do is add a ground reference. We always need one of those in every schematic. And finally, we need a DC voltage source. That's located back up at this icon bar. Clicking on this AND gate, and you'll see it flashing up, saying it's some kind of component. Okay, if you click on that, a whole library of component appears. But if you go towards the end of the list, and there is something called voltage, that's a voltage source. Click on that. And there we have placed all the elements that we need for our simple voltage divider. So a couple of more things. One, we need to connect all the components up and back to the top. The icon again, you'll see something that looks like a pencil. If you hover the mouse over it, it says wire. You left click on that. Now if I go back to here, you might want to see this is something that's quite interesting and powerful within LTSPICE. When I start the connection, notice I'm going to run right through these resistors here. It's like as if I'm shorting them. But then magically, when I complete the connections, those shorts have been removed. LTSPICE is smart enough to know that you probably didn't mean to short those resistors. So that's a nice shortcut for wiring a bunch of components together. And finally, we also need to wire this ground symbol up. So that's the schematic all wired up. Finally, we want to set the component values, or change the component values. This is where you hover your mouse over the device and you right click on it to bring up this menu. So I want 10 volts DC, click OK. I hover the mouse over R1, I right click. I want to change that to 1K, it's 1 kilos. and right click on R2, change that to 2 kilohms. So that's the entire schematic now drawn, connected, and the next step we'll do is to see how we can set up and run a simulation. We have our schematic drawn now, but before we can run a simulation, we need to tell LTSPICE what kind of simulation we want to run. To do this, go up to the pull-down menu bar, click on Edit, then choose SPICE Analysis. A new window opens, and this is all the kinds of different simulations you can run in LTSPICE. It's pretty classic for a SPICE style simulator, these kind of analysis. For today, all we're interested in is the last one. Click on the last tab, and this stands for DC operating point. Click OK. Notice that this .op now is attached to my mouse cursor. I want to left click on the mouse to drop this .op in the schematic. This is how LTSPICE knows that I want to run a DC simulation. With everything set up, all I need is to run the simulation. Looking back up at the icon bar, you can see there's a little running guy figure up here. Click on that, and the simulation results appears. Now, you can go through this and try to decipher, some of them are fairly obvious. What is the current through R1, R2, and the voltage source? But now these different node voltages is where you need to figure out, well, what is node N001 and N002? So if you find this useful, great, but there's other ways you can use to look at the result. So let's close this window up. And to look at node voltages, what I'm going to do is hover my mouse over the node that I want to probe, if you will. So my mouse is over this node between the two resistors. And if you look at the lower left-hand corner of the screen, you can see the simulated voltage on that node, about 6.67 volts. So all is good. And what if I want to look at the current through one of these devices? Move the mouse and put it over the component. The mouse cursor is going to change to a hand. And now if you look at the lower left-hand corner again, you will see the current through that resistor, 3.33 milliamps. Finally, suppose for documentation purposes, I want to annotate or put the simulated voltage for this node onto the schematic. How do I do that? Well, it's quite simple. All you need to do is hover the mouse over that node and click on that node. Voila, you can see the simulation results appear. If instead you want to have this display the current through R2 instead, what you can do is hover over this label here, the 6.67 volt label, right click on it, and now in the expression we want to delete this $ and select from up here, click on the current for R2. Okay, and this appears. So this is a very quick run through on how to build a schematic, run the DC simulation, and look at the simulation results. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next video.